I've just sold £39,099 worth of stocks out of the 60,000 that I hold within my investment portfolios. Well, kind of. But don't worry, since my time away from YouTube in the past few months, I haven't gone crazy. In fact, most of this money will be fully reinvested within the next 30 days. Let me explain. You see, when I first started investing, I was just like most people. I had spent a long time saving up my money, I was storing it in a savings account earning little to no interest, and I was extremely cautious and hesitant on where I could put my money to keep it safe. When it came to investing, I always looked at it similar to gambling, with it being a loser's game, and I was always scared that everyone in the space was either out to earn a quick buck or just flat out scam me. And despite reading books and watching interviews with Warren Buffett and learning that almost every single wealthy person in the world invests one way or another, it did go on for quite some time. All the way to the fact that I actually never had the confidence to either invest or store my money with another provider other than my bank. However, a few months down the line from this, I actually came across Hargreaves Lansdown, who are possibly the biggest investment platform in the UK. I learned that they were a FTSE 100 company, which in simple terms is they're massive, and they were also covered by the Financial Conduct Authority, which basically means if they ever went bankrupt, your funds would be completely protected. So, with that said, and this newfound confidence, I started to try investing. I also knew I could open a stocks and shares ISA within this account, and I was confident that my money would be safe no matter what. And for the first year, things were going great. I felt comfortable with what I was doing, and my investments were ticking along quite nicely. I also shared my updates on this YouTube channel, and I felt like I was making my first steps to a financially free future. However, there was this one thing that was niggling at me every single time I went to make a new investment: trading fees. Every single time I wanted to invest, whether it was £100 or £1,000, they would charge me £11.95 for doing so. Now you see, for the most part, Hargreaves Lansdown are actually known for dealing with multi-million pound portfolios and monster pensions, so I'm guessing the £11.95 fee to those guys will most likely get squashed and never noticed. But for me, unfortunately, with my finances at the time and right now, they weren't that big to make the same case. Instead, I was the guy that only had small amounts and wanted to invest regularly and often, and when you take that fee off every single time, things started to get quite expensive. What this did was then led me to start looking for cheaper alternatives, and luckily at the same time, I just started to realise that investing into index funds and ETFs was actually much easier than going out there and picking stocks, and it was Vanguard funds like VUSA and VMID that were my choice of product. However, the mistake I was making was thinking that whilst Vanguard was the product, you couldn't invest directly with them on their platform. Basically, what I thought was that it was a US based only platform and that we had to use our other apps like Hargreaves Lansdown in the UK to buy their funds through. And of course I was wrong, and they don't. They actually have a dedicated platform for UK investors with a stocks and shares ISA available, and the commission charges per trade were free. Yes, of course, every single fund comes with their own management fees, which are very small, and you'll never be able to avoid them, but to go from having to pay roughly 12 quid per trade to nothing, this was an absolute no-brainer. So knowing this, the next time the ISA deadline came around, I opened my account with Vanguard, and once again, things were going great at the start, and my only focus was just to invest into my S&P 500 fund, and that's all I pretty much did for an entire year. But here's the thing, as my returns went higher and I started to see people making big money on individual companies, I got greedy. I thought it was the time, and I was also good enough now to go and invest into some individual companies and try and beat the stock market. So I logged on to my Vanguard account, I went to search for Apple stock, and I quickly realised that Vanguard only allows users to invest into Vanguard products, which are basically all ETFs and index funds. This meant that if I wanted to invest £3,000 into, let's say, Tattoo Chef and watch them go bankrupt, I couldn't, which I definitely didn't do, by the way. So having said that, knowing I couldn't buy individual stocks through Vanguard, and there was no way I was going back to paying 12 quid a trade with Hargreaves Lansdown, once again I then went out on the hunt for another trading app to use. And this time I came across Trading 212. Don't worry, story time's almost over and there's definitely no more apps. But anyways, Trading 212 allowed me to buy pretty much anything I wanted, whether it's funds, individual stocks, REITs, basically whatever was out there, and there was no fee associated with it at all, apart from obviously once again the fund costs. So once again, there I went and created another investing account and began investing, which then brings me all the way back round to today, where I have around £60,000 invested between 3 different accounts, and personally, I think that we can all sit back and agree That's complete overkill. So having said that, what am I going to do about it and why? Well, step number one, I need to move completely away from Hargreaves Lansdown. I have absolutely no plans on using them anymore, at least whilst account and trading fees are so high. Of course, I get why they exist and the type of customer that they try to attract, and unfortunately, that isn't me right now. What I have just done is initiated what is called a stocks and shares ISA transfer between my Hargreaves Lansdown account and my Vanguard account so that I can move the big bulk of my investments into one place. On average, this should take around 30 days to complete, and basically what will happen is they will transfer any Vanguard funds directly into funds within my new account, and they will sell all of my individual holdings that I have, and it will go as cash into my account ready to invest when I like. Just a quick side note, almost every single investment provider out there in the UK will offer a stocks and shares ISA transfer completely free of charge, and it will not use any of your yearly allowance. So if you did find yourself in a similar situation to me and you wanted just to consolidate everything, you can do the same thing, just make sure that you're using trusted providers. Now moving on to the next step, and that is to get any cash left in my account invested as soon as possible. There will actually be quite a bit, as I had a large position in Apple and moderate ones in Meta and Coca-Cola, but it needs to be back in the stock market as soon as possible because cash in my investment account isn't going to earn me much interest at all. I know some might say it's a bad time to do this with some of the funds that I invest into now hitting all-time highs, but whilst I feel like I've flip-flop a bit with my investment accounts recently, one thing that has never changed is my investing goals and general outlook. You see, I have the plan to invest for the next 20 years, so whilst I know right now the market is pretty high, it doesn't really matter if I put my money in now, tomorrow, a month, or in a couple of months. It's just going to be there for the long haul, so I need to just get it in there as soon as possible and forget about it. And then finally, step number 3 is to continue with my Trading 212 account where I only invest into individual stocks. This will be inside a general investing account as my ISA will be with Vanguard, and I know there's a high chance I could do better just investing into funds, but I just can't help it and I want to have some fun too. So having said that, this way I will now be left with 2 investing accounts, one for funds that will be my stocks and shares ISA, and one for individual stocks. Just another side note, I actually think Trading 212 is the best investing platform out there for beginners. It's what I always recommend to any friends of mine just starting out, so if you were thinking about who to use, I highly suggest checking them out. You can invest into pretty much anything you want on there. They have a stocks and shares ISA of course, and if you did want to sign up, there is actually a link in my profile that will get you a free share worth up to £100 when you make your first deposit of any amount. Of course, just like with any investment, your capital will be at risk, so only invest what you can afford to. But realistically, this is why I've recently sold £39,000 worth of my investments. If you have got to this stage, I hope you do forgive me for the slightly misleading title, but I do also hope you get my point. Oh, and one more thing, now this is a lot more simpler, I look forward to sharing my updates for both of these portfolios, hopefully on a month by month basis going forward. Thanks for watching and sticking around, and I'll see you next time.